Good morning and welcome to our June 23rd, 2022 Law and Regulation Committee meeting. At this time, I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll do a silent roll call. I'd like to also note that in Vice Mayor Havishelt's absence this morning, we have our Mayor, Krista Bernasconi, who will be joining me this morning, during this meeting. So at this time, I'd like to call upon Sean Bigley, our Assistant Environmental Utilities Director, to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Sean. At this time, I'll open our meeting up to public comments. Ask anyone in the audience if they would like to come forward and discuss anything that is not on this morning's agenda. Seeing none, I will close public comment. We'll move on to the minutes from our prior meeting.
Do I have committee consensus to approve the minutes?
Yes, I move to approve the minutes.
I was not here. Is that okay if I approve?
It is, yes.
Yes, then yes.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on, item 6, reports and comments. At this time, I'd like to call upon Mark Lewinsky, who will discuss matters that the city is following and of interest to the city.
Thank you, Councilmember Mendoza, and good morning, Mayor Bernasconi. Once again, I'm Mark Walensky, Government Relations Administrator, and I'm joined this morning for today's presentation by Rob Becerra, the Roseville Police Department Public Information Officer. Our presentation is an overview of the city's priority list of legislation related specifically to safety, public safety, housing, and homelessness. By way of brief background, this year, many of the bills moving through the legislature focus specifically on public safety and the state's housing and homelessness crisis. As we've seen before, many of the bills being considered would place new restrictions and mandates and requirements on local governments, which is concerning to the city. However, other bills that we are following would have positive implications to the city and our community. The following is an overview of some of the priority legislation related to public safety, housing, and homelessness. And at this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Rob, who will cover the areas related to public safety. Rob?
Thank you very much, Mark. We are very excited on the government relations team specific to public safety legislation because we are down to tracking our top 15 most important pieces of legislation moving through the State House at this time. One of the things that we've done is we've broken down into 8 different categories, and we put those in the minutes, and they're on the screen. And so today I'm going to highlight one piece of legislation moving forward from each of our categories. The first is under our homeless response category is SB 513, which would require agencies and organizations to supply grants for people experiencing homelessness or domestic violence to care for their pets. And when we talk to our social services folks, this actually comes up quite a bit as a barrier for people to seek services is they have a pet, and a lot of shelters or places that they would go to get care don't allow pets. And at this time, we are just watching this. We have not taken a specific position on it, but we thought it'd be something of interest moving forward as it continues to move through with a decent rate that it will likely pass and hit the governor's desk. Moving to mental health and crisis response, AB 662. This is one that continues to evolve. It actually started out, I'll call it a gut and amend, but it did start out under mental health training and response. We initially started tracking this because we thought there would be impacts on our communications and our dispatch folks as they took in calls, and then how we diagnose and create a response for people who may be experiencing mental health crisis, oftentimes in the category of what we would call a 5150. This has evolved now to a person-to-person suicide prevention piece of legislation. So initially flagged because it was going to really impact our communication side. Now still focusing on mental health, but really focusing more on the fire service side in suicide prevention, peer-to-peer suicide prevention. AB 1598 is this one is a bit of a nuanced piece of legislation, but related to controlled substances and drug paraphernalia. It is not moving. It is not moving forward, and unlikely that it will be successful. Nonetheless, we wanted to highlight it because this would have made legal for someone to possess testing equipment for drugs like fentanyl, ketamine, and when an officer pulls someone over and represents in a totality of everything that they have on them, say drugs for sale, do they have individualized pieces where they're potentially a drug dealer or they're in the process of selling or dealing drugs in our city? Oftentimes we would see them having this testing equipment on them because through the process that they go through of buying and selling drugs, they want to test whether or not a product has potentially fentanyl in it. This was introduced in large part on our side, we believe, to stop fentanyl-related deaths as it is related to the illegal drug sale market. But again, it's not moving forward at this time, but we continue to track it. AB 1653, this would have added vehicle parts to the Regional Property Crimes Task Force. So the state currently funds and supports a Regional Property Crimes Task Force. This piece of legislation sought to add vehicle parts. This, in our opinion, was to fight the catalytic converter theft epidemic. And it's not moving forward as projected right now, likely because the Regional Property Crimes Task Force said, we have enough on our plate already. We don't want to just specifically now go after catalytic converters or other vehicle parts. So 1653, we continue to track, but very slow moving at this point. AB 2156 relates to firearms manufacturing. This bill was put forward and continues to move forward quite well. Basically prohibits anyone from manufacturing a firearm or a piece of firearm, think specifically about 3D printers, without a state license. That also drastically reduces the number that someone could produce from 50 guns a year to 4 guns per year. So it's really trying to reduce the manufacturing of firearms and firearm parts and pieces. It is moving forward and has the potential to pass. AB 2773, this is the only piece of legislation right now that we have taken a position on, which we are opposing. It has to do with an officer's ability to stop someone and then the notification process that happens. I'm confident that no one here in the room has ever been stopped by a peace officer, but one of the first questions that would potentially be asked is, do you know why I pulled you over? And this piece of legislation would basically not allow an officer to ask that question. This piece of legislation would make it so the officer would have to state the reason why you were pulled over. So instead of saying, I think I was pulled over because I was speeding, the officer would have to come forthright and say that reason. In our opinion, on the law enforcement operations side, this actually creates a pretty significant challenge for an officer. There's always a reason that an officer would pull someone over, but it would drastically limit an officer's ability to pull someone over for maybe a smaller violation and then do a further investigation to figure out the totality of what might be happening inside of a vehicle. So at this point, we're in alignment with our agency partners at Cal Chiefs and at CPOA to oppose this piece of legislation unless it's amended further. AB 1788, this piece specifically related to human trafficking would apply potential civil penalties on hotel staff who don't take action at reporting and recognizing human trafficking incidents. This is not moving forward very quickly. It's likely not going to pass, but based on our large hotel population here, we put this on our list of something to highlight as an interesting approach to stopping the human trafficking. And then the last one that I'll mention is SB 1000. And this one actually does not apply to Roseville, but it, in case you hear about it in the course of business, has to do with encrypted radio channels. Many agencies, with adjustments in state law previous, many agencies moved to encrypt all of their radio communications. That is the two-way radio system that we use from dispatch to officers on the ground. Many agencies chose to encrypt all of their channels. Roseville's approach was to just move to one encrypted channel, and when we needed to pass sensitive information, we, on the police side, would just switch to that encrypted channel, transmit that information, and then come back to the main channel. No impact specifically for Roseville, more of an information piece for you, because this piece does look like it will pass, but know that minimal impact for our city because of the approach that we took previously. Those are my pieces of legislation that I wanted to cover with specific impacts on public safety, and I'll open to any questions or comments if anyone has.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that. Mayor Bernasconi, any questions?
This is a great overview. Thank you. On SB 513 regarding the pet services, you said something about the service provider would require a grant, or can you explain how that works? Would they have to be just offer cash or be able to take the animal in?
It's undetermined at this point on who the granting authority would be, but it's likely the money would come down from the state, and potentially it would be at the county level where the county would actually potentially through the cities provide grants to. Let's use our example here of the Gathering Inn. They would provide a grant to the Gathering Inn to be able to house pets, have veterinary services, food, shelter. So if someone came in with a dog who was experiencing homelessness, they would have a grant that would, in whole or partially, cover the ability for them to bring that pet into the facility.
So it's a funding vehicle, and then they must take the person and the animal. Is it just dogs or cats or?
There's actually no specific restrictions that it has to just be a dog or a cat. But I would venture to guess there'd be some policy put in place by the specific authority.
Okay.
I'd also offer that the funding could flow through the continuum of care. So if it might not go directly to Placer County, but it would be something that the continuum of care could then also apply for to distribute out, to make available to service providers within the continuum that are providing homeless services.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, nice job.
Just a couple items. I'm glad to see that the AB 1653 is moving forward. I know that we're not taking a position on it at this point, but as somebody who's been on the receiving end of catalytic converter thefts twice, to cities to our south. It would be nice if they start putting some resources behind that. On AB 2156, the firearm manufacturing, did they go into detail? This is going to alter anything about specific modifications? Because I know that there are certain modifications that you can do. Are we getting into that at all, or is this just strictly ghost guns, remove serial numbers, that kind of a thing?
Nothing specific to add-ons to firearms, and to your point, you're correct. This one is really just harnessing down primarily on that 3D printed ghost gun, or frankly, someone who can order separately the parts online and then create their own gun. Again, this attempts to really speak to the authorized dealers. It also draws a distinction between being a federal authorized dealer of guns, must also be licensed with the state to be a state authorized dealer as well.
Awesome, thank you. And then one other item on AB 2773, the traffic pedestrian stops. So does this affect anything specific to how we and other jurisdictions are currently doing probable cause stops? So if we have a stolen vehicle, because I'm thinking of our flock cameras here in the city, obviously we would not approach the vehicle and ask, why are we stopping you? That's a whole different set of policies and procedures that we go through. So are we still able to use our existing policy for that? Or is this specific to just traffic stops? Like I'm talking broken taillight, outdate registration, that kind of a thing.
And I think you are running two parallel tracks, right? With our flock system, if a vehicle flags on our flock system, that's cause enough to be able to pull that vehicle over. And you are correct on the other parallel track of if it is a broken taillight or outdated registration, that approach from that officer would be pull the car over and initially say, I pulled you over because your vehicle registration is expired, which potentially would give someone the ability to say, thank you, here's the updated registration, and now we have nothing else to talk about.
Right.
That's just the starter of a conversation where the vehicle may be suspicious for a number of things, but that single reason to pull them over, that's the only thing that can be discussed during that interaction.
So to your knowledge, the way it's written now, this bill is not looking to revise those other types of traffic stops. We would have to make contact, because I'm thinking that would create a dangerous situation for our officers.
Yeah, it's not seeking to eliminate those reasons of cause to pull a vehicle over, but it does seek to limit the interaction to just that.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much. At this time, I'll open this item up to public comment. Is there anybody who would like to speak to this comment at this time? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Thank you again, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next item, I will.
So we're still on 6.1.
Or 6.1.
They're both sharing 6.1.
Right.
Mark's turn.
I apologize. Back to Mark.
Council member. And so the bills that I'm going to be reporting out on are all bills that have passed their House of Origin and remain active bills. The first three bills, first bill is AB 581, which relates to cybersecurity, and the city has taken a support position on this bill due to the importance of a strong infrastructure and integrated cybersecurity system. The bill would require state agencies to implement the National Institute of Standards and Technology Guidelines, or NIST. NIST is a respected cybersecurity standard setter known for careful and thorough development of frameworks that help organizations understand and mitigate cybersecurity risk. The standards work on coordinated vulnerability disclosure, or CVD, best practices, which will become the standard for U.S. federal government CVD programs, and is a logical guidance for the state of California as it implements its own CVD programs. Senate Bill 34 relates to libraries' student access cards. The city has also taken a support position on this bill based on the funding that might be available to city libraries when entering into an agreement to implement a student success card program. And then Senate Bill 369 relates to residential solar energy systems and permitting for those systems. The city has taken an opposed position on this bill, primarily because it would require the city to install a new online permitting program that would, upon completion of an online application, issue a permit for a residential solar rooftop system. This type of online checkbox format would preclude the city from any level of review of the solar system until installation of the system has begun and inspections are called for as defined by the permit. With respect to bills related to homelessness and housing, Assembly Bill 615, the foster youth housing bill, the city has taken a support position on this bill for the assistance it would provide to foster youths. Statistics confirm that foster youths are a segment of the community that are vulnerable to becoming homeless. This bill would extend the age of eligibility for transitional housing in all counties to any former foster youth who is at least 18 years of age and not more than 25 years of age, and would extend the maximum time they may receive services pursuant to those provisions to 36 months. Assembly Bill 411, the Veterans Housing and Homeless Prevention Bond Act, the city has taken a watch position on this bill. As we know, there are more than 11,000 homeless veterans in California and even more experiencing housing insecurity. AB 411 would provide assistance to veterans who are homeless or who need affordable rental housing to secure housing for themselves and their families. Staff is watching this bill to understand the outcomes and opportunities that might exist to help veterans in Placer County if the bond were to be approved. Senate Bill 1338, it's the CARE Court, or the Community Assistance Recovery and Empowerment Court. The city has taken a watch position on this bill to understand how this court, if the bill was signed into law, would impact the city's homelessness efforts and how it could be incorporated to help those that are homeless and who have serious mental illness. Assembly Bill 2547, the Housing Stabilization to Prevent and End Homelessness Among Older Adults and People with Disabilities Act. The city has taken a support position on this bill. Based on the support it would provide to address homelessness in senior population. It is understood that 45% of unhoused Californians in adult-only households are aged 50 and older. A recent study showed that nearly half of unhoused older people experienced their first episode of homelessness after age 50. Homelessness continues to contribute to lower life expectancy, especially among seniors. This bill would create a program to address the housing needs of lower-income seniors and peoples with disabilities who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. The department would administer the program and award grants to local housing authorities, continuums of care, or nonprofit organizations. And then AB 2186 is the Housing Cost Reduction Incentive Program. The city is taking a watch position on this bill to understand how the creation of the Housing Cost Reduction Incentive Program would encourage cities and counties to waive or reduce impact fees for affordable rental housing developments, and how the program would reimburse 50% of the value of fee waivers or reductions granted by the city. The bill stipulates that in the event that incentive programs exceed appropriations in any given year, awards to cities and counties would be prorated. It is unclear how the bill would address this shortfall should it occur, which would be problematic for local governments wanting to participate in the program. And then with respect to the federal side of what we're watching, the staff is closely monitoring the discussions on the Build Back Better Act and to understand the types of funding that might become available to the city if the act was passed and signed by the president. As noted in previous reports to the committee, the Build Back Better Act failed to be approved by Congress late last year. A substantially smaller version of the bill is still being considered, and discussions between Senators Schumer and Manchin continue to unfold. There is a growing recognition that the passage of the bill could hinge on prescription drug pricing provisions designed to decrease government spending on pharmaceutical and lower patients' out-of-pocket cost. The fact that the two senators are focused on this element of the bill is considered to be significant and indicates that signs that there's earnest discussions that are occurring. Despite the remaining uncertainty regarding the bill, it's still possible that a very narrow Build Back Better package will be brought forward this week, and the upcoming elections are playing a role in that effort as well. So in conclusion, this concludes our presentation, and I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'll open this up to the public. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back up here. Mayor Bernasconi?
No questions. Thank you very much for the information.
Thank you, gentlemen. Always appreciated. At this time, we'll move on to item 6.2. We'll move into our electric department discussion. I'd like to invite Chris Romero to come up and make his presentation, please.
Thank you, Councilmember Mendoza, Mayor Bernasconi. For my presentation, before I get started on the meat of the presentation, I just want to go over a few legislative milestones. As Mark stated earlier, all bills have passed their House of Origin, and they're on the other side now. As of June 15th, under California law, the legislature must approve a state budget, and this deadline was met last week. July 1st, summer recess begins for the legislature. They will reconvene on August 1st, and then August 31st is the last day for each house to pass bills. So time is quickly approaching in this process. Regarding our legislative and regulatory summary today, I'll start off by identifying state bills we've been monitoring, covering such topics as electrically conductive balloons, greenhouse gas emissions hourly reporting, the Clean Energy Jobs and Affordability Act, a state dashboard on greenhouse gas emissions, and then we will finish off with a bill related to a state transmission grid study. After briefing legislation, I will talk about the climate and energy package within the state budget, and then we will conclude the presentation on a federal issue regarding a letter our trade association sent to the Department of Energy. Our first bill of discussion is Assembly Bill 847 on electrically conductive balloons. As you are aware, electrically conductive balloons can cause power outages. This bill would require on or before September 1st of 2024, the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety to adopt regulations governing the sale or manufacture of celebratory balloons constructed of electrically conductive material. The regulation shall require that these balloons must pass a standard test performed by a reputable electric testing center without causing a fault at high voltage distribution levels. After September 1 of 2026, a business cannot sell and a manufacturer cannot manufacture for sale in California any balloons made of electrically conductive material unless it complies with the requirements of this bill. For increased local control, our trade associations were seeking amendments to allow each publicly owned utility to create its own local balloon ordinance. However, the author is set with the existing bill language. This bill will likely reduce power outages on overhead lines, which utilities actively support. Our next bill is Senate Bill 1158, hourly reporting of greenhouse gas emissions, a priority bill for the Senate. This bill proposes a new reporting framework to require hourly greenhouse gas emissions annual reporting by electric utilities to the California Energy Commission. This hourly greenhouse gas emissions reporting would begin January 1st of 2026. The bill would also require the California Energy Commission to annually publish on its internet website an aggregated summary of the data reported by each electric utility. The bill, written as is, has the potential to cause increased reporting requirements and staff time for utilities. Roseville and our trade association, the California Municipal Utilities Association, are seeking amendments from the author. We want clarification that the hourly emissions data requirement can be used for planning purposes only, and that it's not a compliance mandate. We're also asking that in lieu of having to provide yearly data, we're asking the author consideration that utilities can provide the option of sending a seasonal sampling of data. We're also seeking that our local board review the data instead of having the California Public Utilities Commission governing board do the annual review. We remain opposed to this bill, and as it looks now, the author is not likely to address our concerns. Senate Bill 1020, the Clean Energy Jobs and Affordability Act of 2022. We have been working with the author on this bill. This bill would establish interim targets to reach clean energy goals, 90% renewable, zero carbon resources by December of 2035, and 95% renewable in energy, zero carbon resources by December of 2040. Currently, we do have that goal of 100% renewable by the year 2045. As stated last month, this bill would establish the Climate and Equity Trust Fund to help with affordability with any rate increases due to this legislation. Prescriptive mandates could be a challenge for utilities. We have been working with our trade association, CMUA, and the author on this bill, and we have provided amendments this week to the author. One of the amendments is to make sure these interim goals are identified as policy goals and not compliance mandates. Also, with increased clean renewable energy goals, utilities continue to stress the importance of reliability for our system in this state. Reliability is not on the same importance to the state as it is for utilities. We're asking in this bill that there'll be an annual state-level reliability assessment instead of doing one every 4 years. And also regarding the Climate and Equity Trust Fund, which is intended to offset costs to ratepayers, we're seeking to put the Climate Equity Trust Fund in the State Department of Community Service and Development, overseen by a governing board that would include a POU representative, in lieu of having the fund located in the CEC and a new decarbonization authority running the fund. This bill, these amendments would increase local input and influence for electric utilities. So we'll continue to work closely with this author, and there's much more to come on this bill. Senate Bill 1145, greenhouse gas emissions. This bill would require CARB to create and maintain a greenhouse gas emissions dashboard. The dashboard would show how the state is progressing toward meeting its statewide climate energy goals, measuring progress that could help future clean energy investments. Just a little background behind this bill. The United Nations Environment Program releases an annual emissions gap report to provide an update on global progress towards meeting and reducing emissions. The report did warn globally emissions do need to fall by over 7% each year between 2020 and 2030 to stay on track to meet elements of the Paris Agreement. California is very involved in the Paris Agreement, and right now, with total greenhouse gas emissions dropping 1.6% between 2018 and 2019, still there is a lot of work to go, according to state leaders, in meeting the emissions goals of 44% below 1990 levels by the year 2030. And then lastly, Senate Bill 1032. This is an electrical transmission grid study bill. It would require the California Public Utilities Commission to submit a study identifying proposals to accelerate the development of the state's electrical transmission grid to meet state goals and requirements for greenhouse gas emission reductions. The study would also require the CPUC to seek lower transmission costs to ratepayers. The CPUC must consider public financing of transmission projects and encourage public-private partnerships for siting and permitting transmission projects and obtaining land use rights. Since transmission remains a big issue for the state in meeting future clean energy goals, it's very important Roseville continue to monitor this piece of legislation and see what direction it may take. As we move to the state budget, Last week, the legislature submitted a $300 billion budget to the governor. Within this, there's $21 billion earmarked for climate and energy-related issues to cover wildfire resilience, extreme heat energy, zero-emission vehicles, and other climate-related items. Immediate funding could likely address the expected energy shortfall expected this summer. Several budget details are expected to be finalized over the next couple months, and we anticipate certain details will likely be approved in future budget trailer bills. And then as we jump over to the federal side, last month one of our trade associations, the American Public Power Association, also known as APPA, and the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association sent a joint letter to the Department of Energy asking for a temporary waiver of the Department of Energy's distribution transformer efficiency standard. Utilities believe a temporary waiver will help the supply chain issues electric utilities are experiencing in buying transformers. Although temporary waiving of the standard will not solve the supply chain issue, it could help manufacturers stretch steel materials and increase production volumes. Transformers will be needed this summer with expected power outages throughout the country. The electric utility sector is continuing to have discussions with the Department of Energy, and the DOE clearly recognizes the supply chain issue for distribution transformers is a major problem at this time. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
This time I'll open up public comment. Is there anybody has any comment on this issue? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Bring it back up here. Mayor Bernasconi, any questions?
No, just thank you for your presentation, and many of those are really so important to our city, especially the transformers. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's discouraging on Senate Bill 1158 that the author is not willing to address our concerns given the gravity and how burdensome that could be, to us. So that's sad to see. But pretty consistent month over month. It's nice to see that all the agendas are remaining the same down under the dome as far as what they're trying to push out. So good presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will move on to our environmental utilities, and we'll hear from Noelle.
Good morning, Councilmember Mendoza. Good morning, Mayor Bernasconi. Today I'll be providing an overview of several high-priority bills at the state and federal level, as well as updates on regulatory and funding items. The first measure before you is AB 1931. And I just would like to offer upfront that providing our customers with safe, reliable, and affordable drinking water is a top priority for Roseville. However, with that being said, staff has concerns with this measure because it contains duplicative and conflicting requirements to the recently updated federal lead and copper rule and prior legislation at the state level requiring agencies to inventory and replace lead service lines. Along with this bill contains vague standards that would be impossible for water agencies to comply with. The measure was on Monday, the committee analysis for this bill was released, and basically it was suggesting the bill be gut and amended, which means the contents of it be removed and replaced with something different. The proposed amendments went a long way to addressing many of our concerns because it took out a lot of the duplicative language that was in it, and it was what the amendments were suggesting to be focused on three areas. One, taking advantage of over $15 billion in federal funding for lead service line and galvanized line replacements, setting a high bar for the allowance of partial lead service line replacements, and allowing for a narrow exemption for emergency lead service line repairs. The measure was scheduled to be heard in committee yesterday, where the author was anticipated to take the committee amendments. However, at the last minute, it was pulled from the agenda. And so it's uncertain at this point if the bill is going to be moving this year. It does need to be heard in committee by next week in order for the bill to continue moving forward this year. So we will have a better understanding later this week, early next week. The next measure is AB 2481. And this measure provides a number of updates to the household hazardous waste laws. And I'm just going to provide you with a few. These are really aimed at making it easier for local agencies as well as homeowners to properly dispose of household hazardous waste. For example, it will allow a household hazardous waste recycling only facility to also accept oil-based paints in addition to latex paints. It also would allow local agencies that discovered abandoned household hazardous wastes to deliver the wastes to a local facility themselves without having to contract with a registered hazardous waste transporter. It also will allow the household hazardous waste collection program to take in over 5 gallons of latex paint from a single residence at one time. I don't know if anyone's painted a home, all of that leftover. You have multiple colors, different types. This will allow you to take it all at one lump sum time versus having to make multiple trips. And finally, it would allow an individual who is not a resident of the house to be able to transport any household hazardous waste to a facility for a generator. I just think as our parents are getting older and things like that, helping them out and being able to take those household hazardous wastes and properly dispose of them for them is an important option. This measure is actually enjoying bipartisan support and sailing through the legislature, and we do expect it to make it to the governor's office. The next measure is SB 222, which is the Water Rate Assistance Program. We spoke about this measure a lot last year, and at the end of the session last year, we had worked with other agencies to get to a support position. However, it was late last week that we heard from the author's office, Senator Dodd, that he was going to be reintroducing this measure, or actually putting it back and making it active, and was going to be accepting some amendments. We have had the opportunity to review those amendments, and they are very likely to cause us to change our position from support. The reason we would be changing from support is the program was supposed to look very much like the LIWAP program that was instituted at the same time as the arrearage program, and it was going to be housed in the Community Services Department. Well, the amendments that we've seen would now move it back to the State Water Resources Control Board, despite the fact that the program is already kind of up and running. That would look very similar. There's also some conflicting language in there that makes it appear as though a local agency would have to be standing up their own low-income rate assistance program, and if we do not, that would be at the oversight of the Attorney General. So once we do see the amendments in print, we're very likely to change our position on the bill, and just wanted to make you aware, this bill is actually ready to go to the governor's office. So as soon as those amendments go into print, not sure exactly how much time we're going to be able to have to act on it and try and get those changes. So it will be a fast and furious one on this one, but we do anticipate it's probably going to be around the July-August timeframe, so within the last month of the legislative session. And the last bill I'm going to take up at the state level is SB 1157, which we've talked about a lot this year as well, which is on the indoor residential water use efficiencies. As you will recall, this measure would set the indoor standard at 47 gallons per capita daily in 2030, and it would drop to 42 gallons in 2030. Did I say that right? Did I say 47 in 2025? Okay, sorry. That didn't sound right. It would drop to 47 RGPCD in 2025 and then down to 42 in 2030. Staff at Roseville was asked to be co-lead and provide testimony in the Senate Natural Resources Committee alongside the Association of California Water Agencies, where our comments focused on the impacts to wastewater and recycled water systems. During the hearing, the author was urged to work with utilities and our trade associations to address our concerns. A unique situation occurred last week where basically in order for water agencies to get some amendments, not the amendments that would make us accept this bill, our associations were basically required to move to a neutral position. Most of our associations did make that move. However, one of them remains at oppose unless amended. Staff at Roseville is working through our associations to get further amendments to really focus in on that 42 RGPCD out in 2030. We just have grave concerns that going down to a level that low would have negative impacts on our rates for our customers as we're trying to deal with the wastewater systems and our recycled water systems. The cost would just be astronomical to try and address that. So we have secured amendments through our associations that they're going to be seeking in further discussions with the author's office. The next measure I have is S3956, which is being called the WIPES Act at the federal level. Last year, we brought AB 818 from Assemblymember Bloom to this committee, which we supported, and it addresses the proper labeling of disposable wipes that actually get improperly disposed of into the wastewater system. And this bill would require the Federal Trade Commission, in partnership with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, to issue regulations for the do not flush labeling requirements on products. Items covered would be things like baby wipes, household wipes, and disinfecting and personal care wipes that do not meet biodegradability requirements. Additionally, the legislation provides funding to support state and local governments' increase awareness campaigns for the proper disposal of these items. Roseville did submit a support letter to Senator Padilla, who is a co-author on the bill. Next, I would like to provide a couple of quick regulatory updates. And the first one I briefly mentioned when speaking about one of the bills, which is the Low-Income Household Water and Wastewater Assistance Program. Back in February, I provided an update on this new temporary program that was created to provide income-eligible customers with relief from past due water and wastewater bills. As a reminder, income-eligible residents will be able to receive up to $2,000 to pay down any past due and current bills. This is coming out of the COVID era, but what's unique about this program is it is not limited to just that COVID time. I received notification from our utility billing department this last month that we are fully enrolled in the program and we are ready to begin accepting payments as soon as that CSD starts rolling out that program. Roseville is very happy to be able to help our customers with this temporary assistance. And we're also, through the state budget, seeking additional funding to potentially keep this program going forward, or the new low-income rate assistance program that would be moving forward with SB 222. The next item I wanted to bring to your attention is that on June 15th, and I apologize, I'm going to be doing a little word spaghetti here, is that on June 15th, the U.S. EPA released 2 updated health advisories and 2 new health advisories for 4 separate per and poly fluoroalkyl substances, commonly referred to as PFAS. The health advisory levels for both PFOA and PFOS have been lowered to essentially 0, which is they are 0.004 and 0.02 parts per trillion. I'll just note that this is lower than what studies have commonly found in human blood samples. New health advisories are for, and here we go, hexafluoropropylene oxide dimmer acid and its ammonia salt, which is now being referred to as Gen X chemicals, has been set at 10 parts per trillion, and perfluorobutane sulfonic acid and its potassium salt, referred to as PFIBs, at 2,000 parts per trillion. The health advisories are not binding, but they are often used to inform policy and rulemakers. While USPA made these announcements, they also announced $1 billion being made available from the $5 billion bipartisan infrastructure law for states to address PFAS and other emerging contaminants. I will also point out that in our staff report, there are several PFAS bills that we are supporting. One that would create a registry for products containing intentionally added PFAS, and others eliminating their use in apparel or beauty products. The last 2 updates I have for you this morning will be on the state budget and our pursuit for some federal funding. As has been reported, and as Chris mentioned earlier, the legislature passed their budget, and there is a $21 billion climate, energy, and drought package. As Chris also noted, details were sorely lacking in that portion of the bill packet. And so what we're anticipating is additional funding coming forward, delineating what is going to actually occur. Some of it we know will go towards the recycled. A large chunk is going towards the energy sector. So we really need to be working with the state legislature on how they're going to work out the funding, especially for the drought that we're currently experiencing. And the final item I have this morning is an update on our pursuit at the federal level for funding to help implement the Roseville-Placer County Water Agency Joint Raw Water Conveyance Project. Last year, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers received a $75,000 appropriation to enter into negotiations with Roseville and PCWA, thanks to Senator Padilla. Last month, the project team met with the Army Corps to initiate a project agreement that would include a cost share agreement. As a result of the meeting, the project team is providing additional information to the Corps, and we are now reviewing the Corps' draft agreement. Additionally, Senator Padilla recently inserted $21 million into the Water Resources and Development Act for Roseville to access for this project. The Senate has approved that measure, which is referred to as WRDA, and the House has passed H.R. 7776, which is their version. Now what happens is the two houses will conference and reconcile the bills, and we are anticipating that to occur in late fall. once the president signs WRDA, we will begin to secure an appropriation. Lastly, both Senators Padilla and Feinstein have included this project in their member-directed appropriations request for fiscal 2023. So these are some exciting prospects for this project, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Noel. Mayor Bernasconi?
There's just a lot packed into all of your presentations this morning. The one specifically, I think it was the wipes bill. Did you say what the future is of that bill?
So that's at the federal level, and the state has already passed. So this would be authorized throughout the United States, and my understanding is it's very likely to be passed.
Okay. And the city's already done information to residents.
Yes.
Often about they are not flushable, which is very confusing to many of our families.
It is very confusing, and so we're really hoping that having proper packaging that states what can and cannot be flushed will try and help to resolve those issues.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Sure.
On AB 2481, I know for automotive facilities and other places that take in recycled oil and petroleum-type products, I know you were speaking of more of the paint and other types of hazardous materials. Are these existing facilities or new facilities that are going to be accepting these items now? Are they going to need additional permits or any sort of additional items to be able to receive larger amounts potentially? Because now people can take more at once than they may have been able to in the past.
So it's everybody who is already permitted. So none of the changes that I recall dealt with any of the oil. It's any household hazardous waste facility that is already accepting these. And going into law, these amounts and these changes would be automatic. It wouldn't have to change.
So the quantity amounts, if a particular facility saw an increase in the number of paint cans, for instance, that they took in, that it wouldn't affect them as far as a business. They could still take as many as they got dropped off because they're an actual authorized facility to receive that.
If there is a cap on the total amount that they can accept, they can exceed that, but what's changing is the amount an individual can bring in.
Got it. So it's just on the individual end.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And then on Senate Bill 2222, this is quite a change from what we've heard in the past. I mean, we've had several kind of updates on this. So I appreciate the update on this and look forward to seeing kind of where this goes.
Yes.
I have to say I'm a bit concerned. I kind of feel like there was a bait and switch here on this so that'll be interesting to see how that goes. And thank you, as always, for all of the explanation on the acronyms. I look forward to our word puzzles every month when you address that. So at this time, I'll open up public comment. Does anybody have any comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comment, bring it back up to the dais. Mayor Bernasconi, any final comments?
Not today.
Michelle, anything from the city attorney's office?
Nope.
All right. Helen, anything from the clerk's office?
Nope.
All right. With that, we will stand adjourned until July 28th when we'll meet again. Thank you very much.